Ano ba siya? Nakashare na ako.
Yes po.
Okay. So, kinakabahan niya. So, today, we are scheduled to discuss and learn uh, Divine Principle Part 2, Chapter 4, the parallels between the ages in the providence of restoration. So, let's read. Since the ultimate purpose of the providence of restoration is to lay the foundation for the Messiah, if it is prolonged, the dispensation to restore this foundation must be repeated. So what does this sentence or revelation inform us? So we need to be careful. We have learned and conscious not to prolong the providence. Since we have already learned and from our previous discussion that we are already part of the providence of restoration. We are living in the last days, so we are part of it, and then we must be careful not to prolong the restoration, the providence of restoration. This has meant, in effect, the repetition of the dispensation to restore through indemnity, the symbolic offering, and the substantial offering. So what are we? So the foundation, as we have learned, the purpose of the providence of restoration is that for us to lay the foundation for the Messiah. So we must always be remember that we God has been initiating and guiding the providence of restoration for the people of this world to be able to accept and attend the Messiah. Not just accepting, but be able to recognize the Messiah when He comes. And most importantly, dapat we will be able to attend Him and be part and help the Messiah to perform His mission by attending Him and becoming one with the Messiah. The nation, centrally responsible for the providence in the age of providence of restoration, starting from Adam, was Israel. So, what are we trying to? There are two parallel providence that we are trying to compare. So, what are why are we comparing it? Why are we discussing it? So that we would know exactly, since they are parallel, we would know exactly when the second coming would would commence, 'di ba? Kailan siya darating, yung second coming? Kailan ipapanganak siya or kailan darating yung second coming of Jesus Christ? So, the Old Testament, which records the history of Israel, provides the source material for studying the providential history of that age. So, in the providence of restoration, first we are to study the history of Israel and the source material in order for us to study the history of Israel is the Old Testament. So, we will be in this lecture series, we will be just giving you a glimpse of the Old Testament. It is your assignment to learn it or to discover it, the details of the history of the Israel. And the central people who became centrally responsible for the providence in the age of the prolongation in the providence of restoration, starting with Jesus, were the Christian. Accordingly, the history of Christianity provides the source material for understanding providential history in this age. So we will be comparing the history of the first Israel, which represent the providence of restoration, to the history of Christianity, which is the providence of prolongation, uh, prolongation of the providence of restoration. And so the history of Christianity will be our source material into understanding the history of Christianity. Yun yung source material natin. Again, just like the history of Israel, which is the Old Testament, it's your assignment to research for the details of it so that you can understand it more clearly. Understand it tend to understand it more clearly. In this sense, the descendants of Abraham in the Old Testament may be referred to as the first Israel, and the Christian in the New Testament age may be called the second Israel. Take note, diba? In the first Israel, the nation was, there was a nation, there was a clear nation wherein the providence of restoration will commence, diba? And they are this is the central people. But in there is a particular nation. But in the prolongation of the providence of restoration, it says the Christians, which there is no mention of the central. There is mention of the central people, but a particular nation was not mentioned. So it's the Christian nation. So it means just like in the providence, dispensation of the providence, in the prolongation of the providence of restoration, from national level, it expanded to worldwide level. Worldwide level na yung scope of the prolongation of the providence of restoration. So the central person, yung responsibility becomes more difficult and accumulated. So since we will be comparing the parallel providential ages of the providence of restoration and the prolongation of the providence of restoration, we need to understand the reason why we are comparing these parallels. The providence of restoration is the history before the coming of Jesus Christ. And the prolongation of the providence of restoration is the history be, uh, before, after the coming of Jesus, or this is the parallel history wherein we need to know the second coming of Jesus Christ, or this is the foundation to prepare for the second coming. This one is the providence of restoration is the foundation for the first coming of Jesus Christ, and this is the second coming. So we need to take note of the year so that we would know almost yung estimated time or estimated year when will uh, the possible some possible time the second coming will commence. At the age of the prolongation in the providence of restoration has been to restore through substantial parallels the age of providence of restoration, the age of the image parallels. As the periods of this age were to restore through indemnity the corresponding periods of the previous age, these periods proceeded in a parallel fashion both in order and in length. So, to continue, for 100-year period persecution in the Roman Empire in the age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration was the substantial parallel periods of the Israelites' 400-year period of slavery in Egypt. Its purpose was to restore that earlier period through parallel indemnity conditions. So, in the providence of the restoration from Abraham to Moses is the slavery in Egypt. This is to restore indemnity, to restore the mistake of Abraham in by not cutting the dove uh, into two. That's why they were, and this is being indemnified in the prolongation of the providence of restoration in the Roman persecution, which is also 400 years. So, sabi niya pareho kasi siya in order and in length. So, pareho siya. So, yung persecution of the Roman persecution is that it started when after the 40 days mission sa resurrection ni Jesus Christ, he sent his 12 apostles and 70 apostles to spread the the news about Christianity. So they went to the Roman Empire, and then they were heavily persecuted there for 400 years. In the for 400 years. Likewise, the 400-year period of regional church leadership was to restore the 400-year period of the judges through the parallel indemnity conditions. So, after the persecution in the Roman Empire, Saint Augustine, si Saint Augustine has tried to has ano bang ginawa ni Saint Augustine? Siya yung ginawa niya na na yung Christian is Christianity to be religion sa Roma, sa maging religion siya. So ang nangyari, nagkaroon ng regional church leadership ng mga patriarch, bishop, saka abbots. Ang mission ng mga to ay ang ginagawa, ang job nila of these patriarch, bishop, and abbots are prophet sila, priest, and king. In the same manner, parallel din to dun sa period of the judges. Ano ba yung period of the judges? After Moses have rescued the Israelites dun sa Egyptian slavery, through which was continued by Joshua, nagkaroon ng period of the judges. When they reach Canaan, they were when they entered Canaan, dinivide nila yung land according to the 12 tribes of Israel, di ba? And that doon nagkaroon ng mga judges that it start ang mga sikat dito sa mga judges ay sila Samson, sila nag-start yan. Ang pinakadulo na ang dulo na judges is si Samuel. Wherein siya yung nagkaroon ng because yung mga judges na to, si Samson, ang their job is also just like the regional church leadership, ang job nila is prophet, priest, and king. Sila din yon. Actually, sila yung mga leaders ng tribe, tapos sila, and then just like the regional church leader, yung mga priest, yung mga bishop at saka mga abbots, ano sila, naging corrupt din sila, kaya nga kaya ang nangyari sa kanila, nagkaroon ng parang law na ginawa ni Charlemagne. Kaya hindi na sila. And then, ito naman sa judges, naging corrupt din sila, kaya naisipan nila na magkaroon ng kingdom na wala ng judges para mawala na yung pagiging corrupt ng mga judges sa land of Canaan o sa Israel. So, sa pamamagitan ni Samuel, nag-elect sila or nag-assign sila, nag-appoint sila ng isang king. Kaya sumunod yung United Kingdom. Just like dito, nagkaroon ng Christian Empire din. Sa after nung naging corrupt yan, through Charlemagne, nagkaroon ng Christian Empire. So in the 120 years of the Christian Empire was to restore the 120 years of the United Kingdom through the parallel indemnity condition. So pareho din sila nang nangyari. So, sabi nga natin, in order and in length. So, kung bibilangin natin ngayon, so 400 plus 400, so 920 na, 920 years na. Okay? And then, the 400 after that, the 400-year period of the United Kingdom of East and West was to restore the 400-year period of the divided kingdom of North and South parallel indemnity condition. Ito yung East and West ng dun sa Christianity. Sa leadership ng mga priest yung sa kanila sa Christian Empire. Ganun din, nagkaroon din ng na-divide din yung katulad din niya, pareho din siya, parallel din siya sa yung divided kingdom of North and South dun sa Israel, na-divide din siya. And then the 200-year period of papal exile, so again, they become corrupt again, and then kaya nagkaroon ng papal, yung mga Christian leaders, naging corrupt sila, kaya pinatalsik pinatalsik yung papa, nag-agawan sila ng seal, ganyan yung nangyari sa kanila and that commenced for 210 years. And also the same manner sa Israel din meron Israelites exiled to Babylon and then their return to Israel. They were exiled to Babylon. So pag bibilangin natin ulit 920, di ba? Plus 610. Ilan na siya? Ilan na? Ay, 610, ano? So following the period of Israel's exile and return, another 400 years elapsed before Jesus came. So merong preparation for the advent for the Messiah. This was the preparation for the advent of the Messiah. Likewise, Christianity is to meet Christ at the second advent only after passing through 400 years of period of preparation for the second advent of the Messiah, which had followed the papal exile and return. So after after yung exile nila, na dumating si Malakay at siya yung nagkaroon ng prophecy na darating na yung Messiah. So kailangan silang they need to prepare for the advent of the Messiah. Dito nagkaroon ng, just like, dito naman, dahil naging corrupt dito sa Christian history, naging corrupt yung mga Christian church leader, so nagkaroon ng uh, protest. Kaya doon nagkaroon yung Protestantism through kay Martin Luther. Kasi nga masyado na silang nasasakal sa kanilang masyado na yung nasasakal yung kanilang faith kay God. So nagkaroon ng protest at ang nag-umpisa nun is si Martin Luther King. So yun. And then after that, because of that, nagkaroon ng preparation for the second advent, which is 400 years parallel to the preparation of the advent of the Messiah kay Jesus Christ, yung first coming siya. So kung bibilangin natin siya, ilang years siya, kanina 920 plus 610, ilan na siya? 610 calculator. 920 plus 610 plus 400, di ba? So, 1,930. Yung parallel niya is 1,930 yung total niya lahat. So, expect natin, just like dahil parallel siya, pareho in content and length, so most probably, pagdating ng 1,930 years after the death of Jesus Christ, para dumating yung second coming, meron dapat more or less 1,930 years. Dumating na ba yun, 1,930 years na yun? So, that ends my presentation of the parallel periods. Yun lang naman yung purpose bakit natin inaalam yung parallels in order for us to determine or estimate when will the second advent will land sa last days natin. In this dispensation, the providential dispensation, which is we call that the last days, diba? And that ends the chapter 4 ay yung my presentation. We will Sir Herwin will now discuss yung section 7.
Yes, thank you so much, Ate Relina. Please give hands, brothers and sisters. So very, lang siya, maiksi lang siya, no? Chapter 4. And then, what time? Okay. So let's continue later na yung reflection at saka mga questions niyo po. Entertain. Maybe, prepare na po ba yung next natin na lecturer? Prepare na ba? Okay, hindi ko na patagalin pa. So ano pa yan? This afternoon, for the continuation of our topic, for the for section 7, the providence of restoration and the progress of history. Okay, please help me to welcome our very hardworking brother from Opta. Please help me to welcome Brother Herwin Kalinawan.
Kakanta na ba ako?
Kanta ka muna bago
Grabe
ka
naman.
mag-lecture.
Kakanta na lang bago huwag na
Kanta
lang
na ako, hindi lang
mag-lecture.
mag-lecture.
Ang reflection is yung kanta. Paano kantahin?
Sige, sige. Okay, good
Pwede na
afternoon,
mag-prepare na.
brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
Napugos ng jugo ato ba? Silin kasi hindi kumanta. So, choice. I-release ko na yung kanta ko, brothers and sisters. So, please subscribe also. The joke lang. Okay, so I will discuss section 7, the providence of restoration and the progress of history. Are you still okay?
Yes.
Yes or yes?
Yes or yes. No.
Yes or yes? Yeah, this is quite like long, but let me share with you. Section 7. Also, now, did you notice we're directly section 7? It's because yung discuss niya na it's coverage of section 1 to 6. So since we are basing the 3 hours, so ang nakalagay kasi doon is yun lang yung na-lecture niya Terlina. But that is the brief actually, the brief from 1 to 6. Now I'm going to lecture and share to you about this section 7, the providence of restoration and the progress of history. So this is really like important because we are gonna study how the history progress along with the providence of restoration. Kasi nga we've learned from the from the last days that behind the history, the transformation from Satan's dominion to God's direct dominion, there is the providence behind the providence of restoration. So here from the progress the progress of the history also, there is a work of God behind the history. And paano nag-work si God? So malalaman natin dito. So the history from the providence of restoration until na prolong siya from starting with Jesus course and up until now. So tingnan natin kung paano nag-progress yung history. And then kung paano din nag-work si God behind the providential history. So meanwhile, on the basis of his relationship of blood ties with the first human beings, Satan has worked through the fallen people to realize in advance of God a perverted form of ideal society which God intends to realize. As a result, in human history, excuse me, lasang-lasa ko pa yung ice cream. As a result, in human history, we witness the rise of unprincipled societies, which are built upon twisted versions of the principle. So, while God is working to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, Satan also is doing the other way around. This is doing the unprincipled society. So, kasi sabi nga ni Father, di ba, Satan is not resting. Also, God is not resting. still continue, because if God will stop, then the providence of Satan will, it would be very, very hard to restore human beings. So kailangan mag-advance din si God even beyond, many times beyond Satan's work. So at the end of human history, before God can restore the kingdom of heaven and earth, Satan will have built an unprincipled world in distorted image of the kingdom. This is none other than the communist world. So, yung nag-build din si Satan ng world that is communism, na masasabi parang imitation siya sa kung ano yung kingdom of heaven. That is why, di ba, we've learned from the communist people as well. Their especially kay Karl Marx. Yung ano niya doon, Magna Carta, that the principle of the theory of communism is really good actually. It's like kingdom of heaven as well. But the problem is this doesn't last long because of course they are focusing on materialism. Anyways, so God is creating a kingdom of heaven and earth, while Satan also is building another kingdom, and it is the communist world. So yun doon nag-progress yung nagkaroon ng parang magiging dalawang history, that God's history and God's work and Satan's work. So when we examine, of course, so here the progress of history in the age of the providence of restoration. So pag-aaralan natin yung paano nag-progress yung history sa time yung sa providence of restoration. This is not yet the prolongation, but this is the providence, the age of the providence of restoration. So when we examine the course of social development guided by Satan, we find that clan societies arose out of divisions between individuals in primitive societies. And the societies have tended to expand in scope, with clan societies developing into feudalistic society, then into monarchic societies by increasing their territory and power. Satan preempted this pattern ahead of God because he understood God's plan to call good individuals and have them build such societies. So, ito yung dito nagde-develop yung societies, yung social development ng environment that time. From primitive, develop siya into clan, feudalistic, and then monarchic. So, God called Abraham to be the standard bearer of goodness and blessed him with the descendants who would uphold God's will. God raised up Abraham's descendants into the first Israelite clan society. They entered Egypt as a clan society, but by the time they left Egypt to Canaan, they had grown into tribal society. The Israelites society in the period of the judges was a feudalistic society. Then they entered a monarchic society with the establishment of the United Kingdom of Israel. So at the time of Abraham, so yung nag-start ng primitive societies. Ang mga primitive people kasi, they shared their possessions actually. They are sharing their possessions. Which is good, right? But the problem is at that time they don't have this proper system sa society nila. Primitive nga. So ang thinking pa nila is only about sharing and yung hanap sila ng pagkain and to share with others. Actually, this is good, but this was only a defective imitation of society God intends to build. So kasi they were fallen, so they could not unite each other as well. So ang tendency nun lagi is even though they're sharing with their possessions, they will still fight with each other. It's because they were fallen. We have already learned that because of the fall, yeah. Hindi natin ulitin yun. But they were fallen, so they could not unite with each other because we have this original mind and evil mind. So they could not unite with each other. So conflict ang nangyayari. conflict ang nangyayari. So kailangan actually na i-divide yung primitive societies. So nag-develop tong primitive societies, nagiging clan. Ngayon, hindi lang isang clan to, may ibang clan pa. Because there is a certain clan that God also wanted to dwell there on them, and there is another clan as well, na which is kay Satan din, Satan's clan. So at that time, so develop ang clans from primitive to clan societies. So at that time kay Abraham's family, meron ng mga clan that time. And then feudalistic societies. Nag-develop from clan societies, nag-develop ng feudalistic societies. Kasi this is unstoppable kasi magmumultiply yung tao. And then dadami yung tao. And then so ibig sabihin lalaki at lalaki, and then so there's the development is really possible, and this is not possible, but this is the only way. So feudalistic societies, nagkaroon ng feudalistic societies sa time ng period of judges, but where feudalistic societies are like they were ruled by forgetting. Basta in this societies, yung land, yung true land, if someone will magtrabaho sa iyo, then they will give you land. So that kind of societies, like an exchange. Then after the main reason that the clan societies develop into feudalistic societies is bring property and people back to God. Kasi ang feudalistic societies is about people and property, about land. So it's talking about the creation. So ang purpose nito actually kung bakit nag-develop siya into feudalistic society is because it is to bring the creation or bring up all these properties and people back to God's side, from Satan's side to God's side. So yun yung goal talaga kung bakit merong feudalistic society. So God is using this kind of society as well, from the primitive, clan, and feudalistic. The purpose of this is to bring back to God all those property and all those creation. So by expanding the territory under God's sovereignty to build a foundation for God, like the sovereign of God, that through this feudalistic society nagde-develop. So this was started like 9th century to 15th century. Then they entered a monarchic society with the establishment of the United Kingdom. So after the feudalistic society, nagkaroon ng monarchic society. Kasi there are still problems with the feudalistic society. There's they gained power, but they use this in a different way. Even the time of the Roman empires, they still have this. When they reached, I will explain that later actually. When I will, yeah, yes, we are still in the age of the Providence of Restoration. So monarchic societies. So na-develop din siya ng monarchic societies, United Kingdom of Israel. So in these monarchic societies, they have this like strong economic society, a well-defended sovereignty. Meron silang king, na tinatawag king and queen. But mas powerful that time is king talaga. So kahit ano bang sabihin niya, there is what we call absolute monarchy. That whatever the king will say and wanted to do, it should be like done. So the United Kingdom, like it was founded by King Saul. Sa story ng Bible. So it was founded by King Saul, and the first king, he was the first king of the United Kingdom. Next is si King David, and then next si King Solomon. So ang role ni King Solomon supposed to be is to lay from this monarchic society is to lay a foundation. Yung sinasabi natin foundation, to foundation to receive the Messiah. Yung sinasabi natin ganun, foundation to receive the Messiah. So, ang rule ng ni King Solomon supposed to be is this is to have this kingdom in order to receive the Messiah. Kaya kailangan ng kingdom, di ba? Pagdating ng Messiah, kailangan maka-establish, meron ng kingdom. That kingdom will going to receive the Messiah. But the problem is, the King Solomon, fell into idolatry. Sumasamba siya ng mga, anito ba, mga ganun, Diyos-Diyosan, parang ganun. So, this is like satanic way. So, ganun ang nangyari kay King Solomon. He fell into idolatry. So God had to dismantle this monarchic society. Hindi siya, imbis na ito yung paraan ni God to prepare the environment. Yan actually yung purpose. That is why it was developed from primitive clan feudalistic monarchy. Ang bottom line is to receive the Messiah. But the problem is, at that time of the United Kingdom, it's already united with 3 kings. But the problem is, King Solomon was not able to absolutely believe God. So he fell into idolatry. So God has to dismantle this monarchic system. So yun yung nangyari sa Age of the Providence of Restoration. Kaya nagkakaroon ng prolongation. So nung dumating yung Messiah, since dito pa lang, yung kingdom hindi nangyayari, mayroong kingdom, but the problem is a fallen kingdom. So yung progress ng history na prolong. That is why sa time even sa pagdating ni Jesus Christ, it's also difficult for the restoration. So the progress of history, dito na tayo sa age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration. Before is the age of the providence of restoration. Ngayon, age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration. So ito, alamin din natin kung paano nag-progress yung history. Kasi unang-una, na-prolong ang history is because Jesus Christ was crucified. So, kailangang babalik si Jesus Christ. So, na-prolong ang history. The responsibility of these people were not able to accomplish. So, tingnan natin ano nangyari. The providence of restoration and the history of the West. Had the Jewish people believed in Jesus as the Messiah and united with Him, the Roman Empire, which had unified the ancient world around the Mediterranean Sea, would have been won over by Jesus during His lifetime. Jesus would have been honored throughout the empire as the King of Kings and established a worldwide dominion with Jerusalem as its capital. Yun dapat yung mangyayari. The Jewish people should believe Jesus Christ as the Messiah, then unite with Him. So from Jerusalem, kung na-receive ng mga Jewish people si Jesus Christ, from Jerusalem, ito yung magiging capital. And yung magde-develop from the family of Jesus Christ to the clan and to the buong Jerusalem, then buong Rome. Mag-expand dapat yung kingdom of Jesus Christ if na-receive siya ng Jewish people. Mag-expand dapat sa Rome. Kasi ang Romans that time is very powerful. They've already built this system, and then this like mga knights, mga ganon. They have this and ruled by kings. Then ang mga kings sa Rome supposed is to welcome Jesus Christ, but hindi nangyari. Kasi nga pinatay si Jesus Christ, na-crucified siya. So yun dapat ang mangyari from Jerusalem to Rome, and the Rome will going to spread throughout the world. So hindi nangyari siya because Jesus Christ was crucified. So ano yung nangyari? Ano yung naging option ni God? So always God has a plan. If there is a plan A, always God has a plan B. Ganun ka hardworking si God. However, since Jesus was crucified, the Western Roman Empire came to an end in 476 AD. So the West, the history of the Roman Empire, their power and territory ended at 476 AD, and the center of God's providence of restoration shifted from Judea, the land of God's bitter grief, to Western Europe, formerly the territory of the Western Roman Empire, formerly the territory of the Western Roman Empire. Accordingly, the spiritual providence of restoration based in Christianity has been conducted primarily in Western Europe. Only in Western Europe has the history of this era progressed strictly according to the pattern set by the providence of restoration. So, nakita nyo ang story niya? So, since hindi inaccept si Jesus Christ ng Jerusalem, ang nangyayari na ang providence of restoration napunta sa Judea. Kasi ang Jerusalem and Judea magkalapit lang Israel, like southern part in Judea. So napunta sa Judea yung providence of restoration imbes sa Jerusalem, the land of God's bitter grief. So from Judea, so since hindi na Jerusalem, napunta sa Judea, then napunta sa Western Roman Empire. So pagkatapos ng kaya nga yung mga history ng ito kasi dapat sa Rome. Ngayon napunta sa Western Human na shift the history of the providence has been shifted to another place kasi nag-failed sila. So God has to find another place for him to dwell or to work again the providence of restoration. So napunta sa Western Roman Empire. Kaya then napunta sa Western Europe. Kaya nga yung Christianity, yung mga taga-Western, doon nag-i-start yung Christianity sa Western Europe. Hindi talaga like sa Jerusalem mismo. Hindi. The Christianity started in Western Europe. Doon nag-i-start again the providence set by God. So supposed to be from Jerusalem, Rome to world, ang nangyayari is Judea napunta sa Western Roman Empire, napunta sa Western Europe. Kaya nga, yung sa history the history of Christianity in Western Europe provides us with information about the events which shaped the age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration. So I will talk about it later. So yung kung paano naging yung history ng America, kung paano sila naging Christians is because Western people went to America. And then they spread Christianity there actually. So based on my experience sa America, may mga kasi doon, mga Native Americans. Sinasabi nila na sila talaga yung unang tao doon sa Amerika bago pa dumating ang mga Western Europe. Ang purpose nun is to expand. Ang purpose nung pumunta yung mga Western people, Western Europe sa Amerika is to expand Christianity, to expand the providence of God. Kaya there is a greater responsibility yung Amerika supposed to be. A greater, may malaking responsibilidad sila. Dapat sana. there is so may reason siya kung bakit nag-expand from Western to So yung sabi nga yung mga American people, Native Americans, lagi sila nag-aaway actually doon. Yung ibang Americans din sa Amerika mismo. Is because sabi nila, sa amin tong lupa. And actually, they're right. They are they're the first people who were living in America at that time. Ngayon lang, pumunta lang yung mga Western Europe. So the history, so this was the history of Christianity started. This is where the history of Christianity started. So, ngayon, alam na natin yung how the age of the Providence of Restoration nagde-develop from primitive, clan, feudalistic, and monarchic. Then, here, since monarchy nga, yung kingdom hindi nangyari, eh, because of King Solomon, supposed to be. So, na prolong siya. Because that time din, so since kay King Solomon pa lang, we're not able to prepare well. So, pagdating in Jesus Christ, it's hard also the restoration. So, na-prolong yung providence is because of some failure, the age of providence of restoration. So, dito, time ni Jesus Christ. And nagsiship yung history until napunta sa Western Europe. So, ngayon, alamin din natin na within the history, there is what we call the religion, economy, and politics. Kailangan natin alamin nito, it's because sa history is malaki, meron tayong tinatawag na religion and economy. Ito yung pinaka parang malaking malaking papel sa history, yung religion tsaka economy. Without the religion, I think there is, basta based sa religion and economy, na parang ito yung malaking papel kung bakit nag-progress yung history at paano nag-progress yung history. And then, since hindi na mag-unite yung religion tsaka economy, so titingnan dito sa political history. Nakikita dyan sa political history, dan dun nag-work yung religion and economy. So although religion and economy seem to develop at variance with each other, they are related in the life of society. Thus, there has been some mutual influence between the history of Christianity and economic history. Religion and economy are integrated with our life in society through politics. Therefore, to accurately grasp the progress of history as it moves toward the goal of the providence of restoration, we must investigate separately the Christian economy and political histories. So, iintindihin natin kung paano nag-works yung providence o nag-develop yung history through religion and economy within the politics. Kasi within the politics, meron yung religion at economy. Doon umiikot yung buhay ng tao that time. So pag-aralan natin isa-isa kung paano nag-develop that time. Yung religion, economy, and politics. Tingnan natin isa-isa. With the clan society, start tayo ng clan society. So yung alamin natin yung sabi ko, religion, economy, and politics. Within the crucifixion of Jesus, the Jewish nation had fallen to Satan's side. Consequently, God broke up that society, calling believers out of it to establish a Christian clan society. So, nagkaroon ng, so because of the crucifixion of Jesus, so na-broke up yung Jewish nation. So, pinatasik yung mga Jewish people, different parts of the world that is in the Bible. So, nagkaroon ng Christian clan society. But the Christian clan society, so nag-develop ng clan, but the Christian clan society was composed of rudimentary communities or like undeveloped communities. So, because these people, clan society, is only like composed of simple people. So which means they don't have a structured political and economic system. Wala silang clear pa na structure yung politics tsaka economic system. So in this period, religion, politics, and economics didn't progress. So hindi siya nag-develop this time, clan society na to. even though meron ng Christians clan society or tribal society, yun nga, wala pang proper na leader gano'n para magkaroon ng politics and proper system. So it means hindi nag-develop yung ano nito, religion, politics, and economics at the time. So they didn't progress. So despite severe persecution, Christian clan society gradually prospered in the Roman Empire and developed into a Christian tribal society. Christian society expanded greatly as Christian was brought to the Germanic people who migrated into territory in the latter half of the fourth century. So nag-expand from the clan society, nag-expand siya ng tribal society. Bakit clan pa lang? Kasi konti pala yung naniwala kay Jesus Christ that time. Kung hindi lang na-crucified si Jesus Christ, malaki na sana. Kaso, yun nga, hinusify. So, mag-i-start. Mag-build ulit si God ng society. Kasi based na dito sa Christian eh. Nag-failed na yung mga Jewish people. So, nag-i-start yung Providence sa Christians. Kasi they are the one who believe in Christ. So, kaya malaki yung malaki yung role ng Christians sa Providence of Restoration. Dito, nag-start clan society, but it was not enough. Because kulang pa yung, wala pa silang structure talaga. So, nag-develop ng feudalistic society. So, a feudalistic society was born in Europe when around the fall of the Roman Empire, imperial authority waned and the empire sank into chaos. So, nung nag-fall yung Roman Empire, that time, so nagkaroon ng feudalistic society. From clan society, tribal society, nag-develop siya ng feudalistic society. And then, so this was the time like, the fall of the Carolingian Empire. So, this feudalistic kasi siya. So, this one, yun, naalala ko yung, this feudalistic society ruled by, mga feudal lords. Feudal lords. The king this time, the king had a limited power. May king na that time, pero medyo mas malakas yung power ng feudal lords kaysa king. Kasi ang nangyayari, hindi siya, yung king na yan is like hindi pa absolute, wala pang monarchic na tinatawag natin that time. Kasi yung feudal lords, mas marami silang property ba na kasi this is based on the like kung gaano kalaki yung lupa mo mga ganun, kung gaano kalaki yung nasakop mo, ganun. Yung mga feudal lords mas marami silang sa king. Parang mahina yung power ng king that time. But the feudal lords are really powerful. Kaya feudalistic society, Christian feudalistic society. So the politics and economy and religion naging na-develop. Pero ang nangyayari is separate development. Separate development siya kasi merong king, may feudal lords, basta they are like parang they want to develop by themselves. Parang ganun ang nangyayari at the time. So, God raised up a feudalistic society among the newly Christianized Germanic people, whom he had chosen to lead the providence by strengthening small units under godly sovereignty, the spheres of religious and political and economic life. God laid the groundwork to establish a godly kingdom. So, nag-raise ng feudalistic society among the Christians, and those are the Christianized Germanic people. This was around like in the midst of 5th century hanggang 17th century yung mga feudalistic society. So, ang time na rin ito, nagkaroon ng rise yung mga pope, mga patriarchs, mga bishop. Dito kaya nga nag-develop yung religion, pero separate siya. Economic, separate din. Political, separate din. So this time, ito yung nag-boom yung mga pope. Meron ng mga pope, patriarchs, bishop, mga archbishops. And then, ang mga ano na to, mga pope na to is nag-a-assume ng mga position as feudal lords. So, ano na, pope ka na, religious ka, tapos nagro-roll ka ng as a feudal lords. So, actually, ano nangyari dito is chaos ang nangyayari. So, it was not yet ideal. So, from feudalistic, nagkaroon ng monarchic society and imperialism. In the sphere of religion, monarchic Christianity was a spiritual kingdom which transcended national borders. It was established under the rule of the papacy upon the spiritual foundation for the Messiah. So, in the political sphere, absolute monarchies flourished from the political sphere, absolute monarchies flourished from the 7th century until the French Revolution, 1789. So there is what we called monarchic Christianity. So at this time, there is a spiritual kingdom. And kingdom na to is built by Germanic people in Western Europe. So, but there is a kingdom na nagfo-flourish, yung kingdom ng Franks or the Carolingian Empire. Mabasa sa principle about the Carolingian Empire. The Frankish kings, also you can read this in the history. So, the Frankish kings received Christianity. Kaya nagkaroon ng German and Roman civilization. So, nag-develop yung spiritual kingdom and yung Frankish kingdom, sila yung nag-welcome ng Christianity actually. So between the German and the nagkaroon ng unity between the German and Roman civilization. So, and then absolute monarchy. So this was like absolute monarchy, like yung super powerful na yung king. That everything is ruled by the king. Colonial expansion. So sa religion, sa politics, sa economic, colonial expansion, nag-expand pa rin yung colony based on monarchy Christianity na to eh. Ang problem nga lang, sabi nga is Christianity, religious siya, monarchic Christianity. Problem is they were like corrupting their power. Since kaya nga 'di ba may mga history dati that time yung mga pari ay yung kinokorrupt yung power nila, may mga yung rule, yung mga anyway, may discuss naman to later sa next chapter I think about those middle age, mga dark age, mga crusaders, labanan ng mga religion. It's because of this improper using their power, corruption of their power. So in the progress of economic history, feudalism was followed by capitalism, which was accompanied by the age of colonial expansion. So from economic history, feudalism, next capitalism, then colonial expansion. Democracy and socialism. So from that monarchic society, nagkaroon ng democracy and socialism. God began a process that would eventually tear down monarchic society and raise up democracies. Kasi kung okay na yung pamamalakad ng monarchic societies, mga monarchy that time, then it would be good for God to the providence. Maganda sana yung providence ni God that time. Providence of restoration. But again, they're misusing their power. So God has find another way again and again. God began a process So that would eventually tear down monarchy society and raise up democracies in the place in order to rebuild sovereign nation fit to receive the Messiah. So the democracy, ginamit ng democracy, started late 18th century, revolution in England, America, and France. And in the political sphere, the democratic movements rose in the late 18th century, gave rise to revolutions in England, America, France, giving birth to today's democratic societies. So yung England, America, and France, they gave a revolution. Sinasabi ko nga, kasi misusing of the power of that time because of those popes and leaders at that time. Even though they're in a Christian society, Christian work setting, but yung ano nila, power, misusing of power nila. So there is a revolution na nangyari. And that begins the democracy, the freedom, and socialism. So the progress of history in the religious sphere moved to the stage of democratic Christianity after monarchic Christianity was shattered by the Protestant Reformation of 1517. First, so nag-start dito yung 1517 kay Martin Luther. Yeah. So Martin Luther started the revolution. To be exact, he started the revolution like yung teachings ng revolution. So he rejected the teachings and practice of the Roman Catholic, specifically Roman Catholic Church about the indulgence. Some of the rituals na ginagawa and mga punishment na ginagawa ng mga Roman Catholic Church. So nag-start yung revolution led by Martin Luther through the Protestant Reformation. So ganito dito nangyari yung religion that time is nagkaroon ng revolution din. With the progress of economics, so sa economic naman, history, socialist ideals arose with undermined imperialism and fostered a democratic form of economy. So nagkaroon ng democratic form of economy. Late 18th century. Then, so those are the what happened behind the history had developed. Those are the stories, and then the history, how it progresses through religion and politics and economy. They are progressing, but the problem is they are separated. Kasi it's supposed to be the ideal world that is that the religion, politics, and economy should be united. Because in receiving the Messiah is these three should be together in receiving the Messiah. There should be one system at the top of this religion, politics, and economy. There should be one ruler. Then following one system within the religion, politics, and economy. That's supposed, ganun dapat ang mangyayari. But because of this conflicting history, dahil nga kay Satan, Satan is working always wanted to stop the providence. So there is always a division. And of course, God also wanted to divide always because he wanted only to choose and to dwell and to start his providence only the good people, good and evil. That's why there is always a conflict is to divide the good and evil, and God will work through the good people. So ito yung nangyari, nag-develop siya in order to receive the Messiah, but the problem is they were separated. And makikita natin ngayon in today's that even the state and the church is being separated. So hindi talaga ni-unite nila. And that's a problem. Kaya ang true ideals, malalaman natin dito. The ideals of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values versus communism. So this is our theme actually sa Rally of Hope. Prosperity, interdependence, universal values. because this is what really the world should be. There is a mutual prosperity. There's an interdependence, and then we have these common values that were shared with one another. This is supposed to be the ideal society that God wanted in order to receive the Messiah. But hindi siya nangyayari. Ito dapat ang mangyayari. But let's see. God desires to provide pleasant environment and living conditions equally to all children, to all his children. At the consummation of providential history, when this ideal can actually be realized, human beings will inevitably pursue a socialistic ideal. So God desires to provide a pleasant environment, so that we can live um, ideally with all his children. In seeking for a socialistic society on God's side, people's original mind has drawn them to the ideals of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. The world in which these ideals will finally be realized is none other than the kingdom of heaven and earth, under the leadership of the returning Christ. Since Satan mimics God's providence in advance, the satanic side has advocated scientific socialism based on the theories of dialectical historical materialism and has built the communist. So ito dapat mutual prosperity, shared values, and interdependence, and to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth. So, but the problem is, while God is preparing for this society, ideal society, Satan also mimics or imitates another form of society. Seems like the same with the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven seems like ideal society, ideal ideology or theory, but ends up an evil world. Communism started with Karl Marx and the idealistic realism. Yeah, so yun, yun ang nangyayari. Dalawa ang world natin. Fusions of religious, political, and economic histories. So yung new expressions of truth. So for the path of religion, politics, and economy to converge and realize God's ideal, a new expression of truth must emerge which can completely integrate religion and science. The religion founded upon this truth which led all humanity to become one with God in heart. Such people will build an economy in accordance with the divine ideal, providing the foundations for a new political order to realize the ideal of creation. This will be the messianic kingdom built on the principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal shared. So the new expression of truth is what is telling us to have this fusion of religions and political and economic histories. To have this fusion of these ideologies na kailangan tong tatlo is mag-unite. Supposed to be in one. Ito yung goal ng new expressions of truth. Kasi ang pinag-aralan nito is the progress of history. Ang ending natin is to receive the Messiah. But the problem is, even if from the primitive to monarchy, the environment is not yet ideal. Because we observe, nalaman natin, that the progress of history of religion, economy, and politics are separated. Hindi mangyayaring magiging ideal ang society pag ganun. Because they are conflicting with each other kung sino ang magro-rule. Sinasabi ng religion, we can rule the world through beliefs. Sinasabi ng economy, we can. We have this industrial revolution. Sinasabi ng politics, we have also the power. We can dominate people. So they have their own mind that they wanted to become greater than other ideologies, the religions and politics, greater with each other. And the new expression of truth, yung dinadala ni parents, is to unite all these three, religion, economy, and politics, in order to establish an ideal society to receive the Messiah and to build a messianic kingdom with an interdependence, mutual prosperity, and a universally shared values. I hope that we have this realization as well na kung bakit kailangang i-unite talaga ni true father tsaka ni mother yung iba't ibang yung mga religion. Like for example, sa Rally of Hope, nakikita natin doon iba't ibang religion, iba't ibang leader ng mga ng politics, heads of states, mga economy, businessman, mga scientists, on all different kinds of people. And this is the main goal of this one is to unite all these three. This is to prepare for the Messiah. But the Messiah itself is doing unity because alam mo bakit? Sadly to say, it's because we were not able to do our portion of responsibility. Not supposed to be tayo ang mag-unite ng religion, economy, and politics. Tayo yung mag-prepare. Yung history and progress ng history, dapat united religion, economy, and politics kung mangyayari. But it never happens. Because first and foremost, we failed as believers. That is why, sad to say, Mother is doing right now. Our responsibility becomes true Mother's responsibility. Dapat yung Messiah pa ikot na yun si Mother eh. I mean, salita na siya about. But now, Mother is working to unite all this. She has planned actually. She is planning everything. Supposed to be like 50 years ago, 100 years ago already prepared. So I hope that we could realize that the progress of history is really have a purpose, and always is to realize our portion of responsibility as well. Prepare for the Messiah, and especially before we can receive the Messiah, this is to prepare ourselves and prepare the environment in order to welcome the Messiah. So I think that would be all, and good evening.